Myth-busting Japan. The myths about Japan you still believe. Japan, a nation described as mysterious, ancient, refined, strict, and sometimes even otherworldly. A place where warriors follow unwavering honor, where silent assassins leap across rooftops, where the country closes itself off from the world for centuries, and where traditions remain frozen in time. At least that's the story the world thinks it knows. But stories can be deceiving. And when it comes to Japan, many of the stories that spread globally are polished myths, created by travelers, writers, foreign observers, and sometimes by Japan itself. In this video, we will break those myths apart piece by piece. Not to diminish the beauty of Japanese culture, but to understand it more clearly, more truthfully, more deeply. Because the real Japan, the complex, contradictory, human Japan, is far more fascinating than any myth. We are about to enter a world of forgotten truths, hidden realities, and stories that never made it into textbooks. Welcome to Myth-busting Japan. The image of the samurai is one of the strongest cultural icons of Japan. A warrior bound by unbreakable honor, guided by an absolute moral code known as Bushido. But the truth is more complicated. The word Bushido itself was rarely used in the periods when samurai actually fought. It became popular only much later during the Meiji era, when Japan wanted to craft a national identity that looked noble and unified to the modern world. Real samurai? They were human. They broke rules. They betrayed lords. Some were heroic. Some were cruel. Some were brilliant bureaucrats who barely touched a sword. The idea of the pure, honorable samurai is a romantic invention, a myth shaped by literature, nationalism, and later, Hollywood. And yet, the myth persists because it feels good. It gives us a story of purity, discipline, and dignity. A story we want to believe. But history is richer and messier than legend. Ninja, the shadows of Japan. Masters of invisibility, silent killers, warriors who could walk on water, fly across rooftops, or disappear in a puff of smoke. At least in movies. Real ninja, known historically as shinobi, were nothing like this. They didn't vanish. They didn't cast spells. They didn't summon clones or breathe fire. They were spies, information gatherers, saboteurs, experts at surviving, adapting, and hiding in plain sight. Their greatest weapon wasn't magic, it was intelligence. Many ninja techniques were simply clever tricks of psychology, misdirection, and disguise. A shinobi might dress as a farmer, a merchant, or even a monk to move unnoticed. The supernatural image of the ninja grew from storytelling, theater, and later, pop culture. But the truth is far more impressive. They survived not by superpowers but by understanding human nature itself. If there is one idea that defines the samurai, it is Bushido, the way of the warrior. A strict moral code of loyalty, honor, and self-sacrifice. But here is the surprising truth: Bushido, as we imagine it today, barely existed during most of Japan's samurai history. During the Sengoku period, a century filled with constant war, samurai were not following a unified moral doctrine. They did whatever it took to survive, switching allegiances, betraying lords, negotiating secret deals, or retreating when necessary. It was only much later, during the peaceful Edo period, that samurai became bureaucrats and philosophers began writing about how warriors should behave. And the modern version of Bushido, strict, noble, selfless, was shaped heavily in the late 19th and early 20th century, long after the samurai era had ended. In other words, Bushido is more of an idealized philosophy than a historical reality. The real samurai lived in a world driven by politics, survival, and personal ambition. Their moral code evolved over time, reflecting the needs of each era, not a timeless ancient rulebook. The myth of eternal Bushido is beautiful, but history tells a human story instead. One of the most common beliefs about Japanese history is that the country was completely isolated for over 200 years under the policy known as Sakoku. No trade, no diplomacy, no foreign contact. A nation sealed shut. But the reality is very different. Japan was selective, not isolated. During the so-called closed country period, Japan maintained active trade and diplomatic relations with multiple groups: Chinese merchants, Korean embassies, the Ainu peoples, the Ryukyu kingdom, and the Dutch, who were allowed to live and trade in Nagasaki. Far from being sealed off, Japan was part of a regional network of information, goods, and technology. Medical knowledge, astronomy, and scientific instruments continued to enter Japan through the Dutch. This flow of knowledge even helped spark major intellectual developments, including Rengaku Dutch studies. Sakoku did not mean isolation. It meant control. Japan wanted to manage foreign influence, not erase it. The myth of a completely closed Japan oversimplifies a sophisticated strategy. A nation choosing what to accept and what to reject in order to survive a turbulent world. Japan is often described as a uniquely isolated civilization, a culture unlike any other, untouched by outside influence. This idea is attractive. It makes Japan feel mysterious, pure, and historically independent. But history shows something far more fascinating. Rather than being isolated, Japan grew through constant interaction, absorbing ideas, transforming them, and making them its own. Writing, inspired by Chinese characters. Buddhism, imported from India through Korea and China. Government structures, architecture, city planning, all heavily influenced by the Asian continent. Even the famous katana, the symbol of Japanese craftsmanship, owes its early development to techniques that originated outside Japan. What makes Japan remarkable is not that it was isolated but that it was selective. It took foreign ideas, filtered them through local values, and reshaped them into something distinctly Japanese. The myth of pure cultural uniqueness hides the real story: a nation that excelled at adaptation, innovation, and creativity through connection. Japan's identity was never about isolation. It was about transformation. Japan's history is filled with legend, stories that inspire, stories that captivate, and stories that grow larger each time they're retold. But behind every myth is a deeper, richer truth. Samurai were human. Ninja were strategic thinkers, not sorcerers. Bushido evolved across centuries, rather than guiding them from the start. Japan's borders were managed, not sealed. And its culture, far from being untouched, developed through connection and transformation. Myth-busting isn't about destroying magic. It's about discovering a different kind of wonder, the wonder of reality. Because real history, with all its complexity, conflict, and creativity, is far more fascinating than any legend. If you enjoyed this journey, subscribe for more episodes as we continue exploring the truths hidden behind Japan's most enduring myths. Thank you for watching. Japan's history still hides countless secrets, and we're just getting started. If you want to uncover more mysteries of samurai, ninja, and ancient Japan, subscribe and join us on this journey through time.